moving forward with the Upchafee campaign. So I'm really glad I can be here with you today and have this critical conversation. Thank you.
Angel.
Hello and good afternoon. Thank you, everyone. My name is Angel Petit, and I am Senior Policy Manager with Foster Club, and so grateful to be joining you all here today, and really excited to be hearing from key stakeholders and young people about why this is so important. Foster Club has had the honor of joining youth villages and young people across the country for the last year, and really advocating to make sure that young people in infant foster care received specific pandemic relief. And so we're really grateful to folks in the Michigan community who are gathered here to really make sure that that happens and that reaches young people. And so what we know about the timeline is that this law was passed in December of 2020, and states and jurisdictions received the funding in February, and guidance was issued by the Federal Children's Bureau in March. And we know that some states and jurisdictions have been planning and working to put these things into place to really make sure that this support reaches young people, and that, that we're really hopeful to be able to partner together and ensure that we can move this forward in Michigan and ensure that Michigan's foster youth aren't left behind and are able to access this federal resource, which does not require a state match and is really available for young people to access as soon as the legislature approves it.
Good afternoon. My name is Iva Gray Woods, and I am the president of FY Tech and a social work student at Wayne State University. Thank you to all of you, supporters and partners and stakeholders, for taking the time to join this important conversation. We have worked extremely hard over the last 4 months to have our voices heard. Since December 27, 2020, FY Tech's youth have waited for critical pandemic relief funds and protections to come to the rescue of Michigan's foster youth ages 14 to 27 during the COVID-19 pandemic. Starting in May, during National Foster Care Awareness Month, we launched a series of foster youth-led campaigns to engage Michigan's legislature and stakeholders to communicate the urgency and need for Chafee pandemic relief funds held in HB 4419 and SB 36S2 to reach Michigan's foster youth. HB 4419 passed the House in May, but SB 36S2 is still holding the $11.5 million in Chafee COVID-19 relief funds designated for Michigan's foster youth and committee. There is still time to support Michigan's foster youth, and today we are joined by multiple panelists that could give us more insight.
Brittany should be in the room. Angel, if you can help us introduce Brittany.
Thank you. Hello, Brittany. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that Brittany will provide a brief introduction of herself. Brittany is a longtime advocate and lived experience leader and has made a lot of change in Michigan's system and at the national level, and is going to be sharing a little bit about the impact of the pandemic on young people in infant foster care. Brittany?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Brittany Barros, and I am from Ypsilanti, Michigan. A little background about myself before I get into the effect of the COVID pandemic on youth and care. I'm currently at Camp To Belong, which is a camp that reunites siblings in foster care after they've been separated. So that's why I got the sunglasses on, my name tag on. That's why I don't look, decent for this, but I'm happy to be here. I am currently going to graduate school at the University of Michigan to get my master's in social work and my master's in public policy. And ultimately, I want to work in child welfare policy. So that's a little bit about me. And then the second question, should I answer that now or later on?
If you could answer that briefly just now, Brittany, I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so let me give you guys some. Yeah, so let me give you guys.
Yeah, sorry, I will ask you like the question like for remind. So if you can describe the impact of the pandemic on yourself and your peers.
Go ahead, Brittany.
Okay, yeah, for sure. So let me give you a personal example, and then let's talk about, the state level and the national level. So my personal example, so I have can you guys hear me? Okay, I have a 5th year of ETV left. I used 4 years of ETV in undergrad, and my ETV coordinator is giving me the ultimatum, if you would like to call it, of like, you can apply for ETV now and only get the 6,000 because it hasn't been signed yet, or you could risk losing it all and wait until the 12,000 is passed. So just, it's been really hard because I do need tuition money to get my master's in social work so I can, become, advanced in my education. And it's just really hard, when the federal government promises us 12,000 and then the state legislator isn't, following suit. So that's what I'm here today to talk about is, my personal experience. And then also on the state level, many youth are, I've met so many youth that are not being able to pay their basic essentials, right? So their DTE bill, buying food, being able to support themselves and their children. What about foster youth that are also parenting, right? And I see on the national level too, so many youth are, becoming homeless, dropping out of school, completely changing their entire life trajectory that was once supposed to happen. And with this COVID relief fund that should be implemented in the state of Michigan, these life trajectories don't have to turn for the worse, right? So we need to pass this, this legislation in the state legislature to release this money, because once we lose this money, we're not going to get it back. When we use so much money in the state and we only use that certain amount, the rest of the amount, we don't get that back. So it's imperative and absolutely crucial for the federal pandemic relief money to come to Michigan youth, because we are suffering. We're losing loved ones to COVID. I lost my grandpa to COVID, so I'm okay. Dealing with a lot of grief. A lot of foster youth are dealing with a lot of grief, and a lot of siblings are also, not seeing their siblings. So, yeah, there's just quite a few ways that the pandemic has definitely impacted us, former and current youth in foster care. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brittany, and thank you for reminding us of how the pandemic has really hit young people hard, continues to hit young people hard, and how this is needed to really be a part of that support system so young people can get back on their feet and back on track in their education and life goals. And I'm really excited to introduce Brandy Mackenzie, who is Michigan's Youth and Transition Analyst from Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So hello, Brandy. And I believe that Shay will be asking Brandy's a question.
Yes, I will. And the question is, can you describe how the department has been preparing to support youth once these funds are approved?
Sorry, I was trying to get off of mute. This is kind of the story of our lives at this point. I will start by saying hello to everyone. I'm so happy that everyone was able, or so many of you were able to join us or join Park West Foundation today for this. But as mentioned, I am the Youth and Transition Analyst within the Children's Services Administration at the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. And so I'm just want to share a little bit about Michigan's or the department's response to aiding young people in accessing this funding. So in January, our office began meeting with department leadership to review the bill and to also determine how it would impact our young people here in Michigan. We attended several webinars, one including the one that was presented by the Administration for Children and Families, or ACF, to really gain as much knowledge as we could about the bill supporting foster youth and families through the Pandemic Act. We really wanted to be certain that we were clear on all of the provisions before enacting a plan. So our team was ready to make the necessary changes in our MySACWIS system in order to be able to process youth and transition funding requests and allow for young people between the ages of 21 and 22 to remain in the young adult voluntary foster care program. So in March, when we received the program instructions from ACF, we were at that time were able to develop a more concrete plan. So to date, our department has developed a website that is ready to go live once the funding is released. The website will have a brief questionnaire for youth to complete that we will use to then determine the young person's eligibility. We have continued to work with national partners such as Think of Us to help get the word out regarding this funding. They've also been providing us a weekly list of young people that have completed their survey on Check for Us. And we are continuing to gather those young people's names and check their eligibility. So once again, we get authority to spend the funding, that we can start quickly disseminating this to our young people. In addition to that, we have what we call communication assurances. Those are used internally within the department. Those are ready to be disseminated to foster care workers, both public and private, our county and private agency directors, supervisors, et cetera, that will provide guidance to the field on how to access funding, this additional funding, and the exceptions that have been made under the Vision Act. We also have a press release that's up and ready to go. This will be shared with our MDHHS partners and on our public website. We're prepared to increase contract amounts for agencies that support our closed case youth, as well as our ETV eligible youth, recognizing that there is going to be an increase in volume of young people that are going to be accessing those services. We are also prepared to use the funding to support young people as it relates to transportation. We're looking to also provide young people with a one-time direct financial assistance, housing, as well as other living expenses, such as payments for utilities or groceries, medical expenses, technology, such as laptops and tablets, internet. We have also identified a point of contact in each of our counties that will work directly with young people to access funding and any other resources that they may need. I would also just like to add that while without this funding, we have not been able to support young people that are over the age of 23. We have continued to use our federal SHAFE funding, as well as the funding that the state matches, to support young people between the ages of 14 and 23. So those young people who have not yet reached the age of 23. We've been able to support those young people in helping them keep and maintain their housing or reestablish housing, educational needs, as well as technology, including purchasing young people's cell phones. It was really important to us at the beginning of this pandemic that young people did not go without having a cell phone to be able to get in contact with their friends and their peers. We've also continued to help with utilities and transportation. I know that for some of our young people, particularly those ones that are over the age of 23, that is not news that you guys want to hear, but we are doing the best that we can to support our young people during such a critical time. And we will continue to do so with the funding that we currently have until we get authority to spend the additional funding. I think that's it, I think there's going to be a question and answer, so I'll save it for that point.
Great. Thanks so much, Brandy. It's so great to hear that you're ready to go. You just need the money so that you can support young people, but it really sounds like a really comprehensive plan. So that's really exciting. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Pokempner from Youth Law Center. We do legal and policy advocacy across the country, and we're really happy to be here today and collaborate with everyone on the call to really make sure that the money can get out to young people. And the great plan that Brandy mentioned can really be implemented and impact young people. I'm going to now introduce our next speaker, which is Representative Mary Whiteford, and she is the chair of the Adoption and Foster Care Task Force and has been a really great champion for young people in foster care in Michigan. So I'm going to pass it back to Carlos to ask Representative Whiteford a question.
Hi, thanks everybody for having me today. It's really an honor to be able to have a chance to listen to you guys and the priorities and what's going on. So I'm actually a nurse. I've been serving for 5.5 years. I'm a grandma. And my daughter-in-law to be is a former foster child. So I've been able to really understand all the trauma that she's been, and losing her brother last year to suicide. It's just incredibly traumatic. So I'm also chair of the $32 billion Health and Human Services budget, as well as being appointed to chair a special task force on adoption and foster care. So I've been meeting with my committee members. There's 10 of us, bipartisan, since February, and just interviewing people from all over the state. And we started with Supreme Court justices down to court administrators, attorney guardian ad litem, private agencies, DHHS staff, foster parents, parents, grandparents, and then children and young adults like you guys who have aged out. So we are coming forth with our recommendations in the next week or two. We've got 30 pretty substantial recommendations. And I know one of them I'd like to give you guys a heads up about is the fact that it's so hard for young people to get the physical and behavioral health services that you need, vision, dental. And there's a way to do it, and they're doing it all over the country, is having just one specialty integrated plan that includes unlimited behavioral health services and will go until the young person turns 26. I met with 30 foster parents last week, and they have all those little ones from age 2 all the way up into their teens. And that was their number one concern. So we really want to make sure that we're able to do that. But thanks for having me, and I'll be available for questions.
Thank you, Representative Mary Whiteford. And thank you for being here. I do have a question about regarding what needs to happen to release the funds.
Yeah, so the House did pass it back last spring, the release of those funds. For some reason, we didn't have a lot of squeaky wheels out there making sure.
Representative Whiteford, it looks like you may have muted yourself and we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me? There. Yeah, I didn't touch anything, but so I've been working close with the department, but the department didn't make sure that this was prioritized as well in getting it out there. But through these conversations, since I talked to some of you guys yesterday, the department has gotten out a notice and said, this is a priority. We need to get this done. I know we have session on Tuesday. I hope to see some movement on the budget. My guess it's going to be within the next few weeks. And I have no concern at all that this money will not be spent. It will be spent. It will be appropriated. You guys can count on it because it's that important. But we just have to work through some things with the Senate and the governor's office and the House just to get this through the final rank so that you guys can count on it.
Okay, and I have a question as well. It is, what do you, the House Task Force, and colleagues in the Michigan Legislature need to do to ensure this funding gets to young people?
Yep. So what we learned from the department, I forgot what her name is, who just spoke before me, is that the department has a plan. They have us. It's really important. We can take the money, but it has to be delineated exactly where that money's going, how it's going to be getting out to people that need it. And so now that they have that plan, we can have certainty that the money's going to be spent properly. So it's really important for us to keep in touch with the boots on the ground people with the department and advocate for that and make sure these things are happening. And feel free to reach out to me in my office at any time if you have concerns, if you need some extra boost, because I'm a pretty good squeaky wheel, just like you guys are doing that today, to make sure that these priorities are not forgotten.
Thank you.
Great, and thanks so much, Shay. I want to now introduce one of our great colleagues from Kentucky, Lorraine Wilbur. She's the program administrator for the Kentucky Department of Community-Based Services. And we wanted to bring, Lorraine is a great advocate for young people in Kentucky and across the country. And Kentucky was one of the first states really to implement this law and do it in a very innovative way, even when it is challenging. So wanted to have Lorraine share some of her experiences. And I will pass it back, I think, to Shay to ask Lorraine a question.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Lorraine Wilbur, the Safety Program Administrator, and I'm open to answering any questions.
Okay, I have a question, and the question is, can you share a little bit about how you've used safety funds? Excuse me.
Lorraine, can you just share a little bit? Shay, I think the last part of your question was cut off. Just share a little bit about some of the highlights of implementation.
Sure. So we began our pandemic relief efforts in early March when we began planning in the end of last year when we found out that these funds were going to be provided to the states. And then as of March, we complied with the Division X in, allowing young people to remain in care, regardless if they met the work and school requirement. We also are allowing any young person to return to care who exited care since the beginning of the pandemic, and that is January 27, 2020. So any young person who left care is allowed to return to care. We also partner with our Youth Leadership Council to we consulted with them to find out the need. We wanted to make sure that we were really meeting the needs of the young people in our community. And so we devised a plan with them and how we would use these funds. And so we provide a direct stimulus check to all young people 18 to 26, current and former foster youth, those who've aged out, and in current 18 to 26. And then we also are meeting needs such as we're helping with purchasing a vehicle. We're partnering with Goodwill Cars to Work to help young people purchase a vehicle. We'll provide up to $4,000 for that. We help with car repairs. We're paying outstanding debt to young people for their post-secondary education because we really want to support them in returning to school. And that usually is a huge barrier for our young people, that outstanding debt. We also are just really helping with crisis funds. That has been really one of the main things that we've seen with these funds, that young people are in crisis. And so they've needed funds to stabilize housing, to pay for food, electricity, just those basic everyday needs. And so we modified our contracts. We created a contract and modified one so that we will be able to provide these crisis funds and what we call targeted intervention very quickly. And so our contract provider is able to do this within a day. They're able to provide these services immediately. They're able to provide case management and really walk young people through the systems. And so these young people also, they need someone to help them walk through the system, to help them find housing. It's one thing to give young people money for housing, but they often need assistance locating housing, filling out applications, finding employment. And so that is the purpose of our targeted intervention. And then lastly, one of the things that I'm really proud of is that we hired on 4 youth peer navigators. One is with me today, Tia Humphrey. We hired 4 peer navigators to be a part of our pandemic implementation. And they really have been the backbone of our implementation. Tia processes all of the pandemic relief stimulus, and you can imagine how many of those are, but she was trained and she processes all of those. Our young people process those crisis funds. So they are integral to this process. So that is what Kentucky has done. We are still working to locate and help as many young people as possible into the very last day that we can. And as my colleague and Brandy said, we are really excited for this money in particular because typically we are not able to serve young people over 23. So these funds have allowed us to serve that population between 23 to 26 who normally are outside of our area where we can assist them. So that has been one of the great things about these funds.
Great. Thanks so much, Lorraine. And thank you, Tia, for all the work you're doing. It's so great that you've been able to bring on young people to help. I think that's really such an effective way to get the word out. And Lorraine in Kentucky is a great example, but I think at this point we have the majority of states are implementing the law. So there's a lot of examples out there for Michigan, but it definitely sounds like, Brandy, you've got a great plan, just need the money to execute it. But did want to share, you've got a lot of colleague states, both surrounding Michigan and across the country, that can provide some support as well. Thanks so much, Lorraine. And I wanted to now introduce Joshua Elizondo. Mr. Elizondo is an actor, director, and cinematographer. He's the founder and CEO of the Foster Bunch. He's also a youth commissioner for the LA County Board of Supervisors and a board member at California Youth Connections. So I want to pass it back to Carlos to ask Mr. Elizondo some questions.
Thank you. Question is, how have you seen the Chafee funding in California impact young people?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for that introduction. And in California, it's been interesting because when I first moved out here, I'm originally from Michigan. That's how I'm connected to this group. I was not eligible to access the Chafee funding that was here in California because I wasn't from California. But once I was able to, it opened a whole new world for me. And working with young people with California Youth Connection over the last 5 years, I've been able to see the impact of what Chafee funding does for students across the state. And so students that are attending 4U universities often have this money supplement their college expenses and costs, so they don't, and it brings down what they have to pay. Students attending community colleges, such as myself, have the Chafee money given to them in check form, because here in California, we have the Promise Grant, which covers all community college. Community college is free for foster youth. And so the Chafee grant money actually came to me directly, and I was able to use it for housing and food security and different aspects for 1 year. And then I lost eligibility when I turned 21. And then in the last year, right before the pandemic, they extended the funding to 24, and I re-engaged that. And the difference for me was the years I wasn't accessing Chafee, I ended up becoming homeless because I wasn't able to pay for my outside expenses and go to school full time and have a job full time. It was be in school or work full time. And I decided to be in school because I felt that was more of a promise for my future. And so our Chafee money here definitely impacts the California youth. I know that we're also extending some of the amounts and monies to new students. Right now, we're still looking to approve some of the Chafee funding. We haven't approved it as well. And that's because we're in a conversation regarding whether or not to give it to new youth who are on the wait list or increase the amount that current youth receive. So in California, those are the big reasons and things that are impacted by the Chafee funding and for foster youth.
Great, thanks so much, Joshua. It's great to get the perspective from other states and also see how states can kind of support Michigan. We're really leaning on all our state colleagues as this implementation is a big collective effort. Wanted to, before we opened it up to Q&A, recognize that Judge Szymanski has joined us, and we really do appreciate having all the stakeholders here that are here today, and really glad to have someone from the judiciary. I didn't know, Judge, if you wanted to say anything really briefly, but we definitely wanted to acknowledge and appreciate your support. All right, well, just for the moment, but Judge, please feel free and others to speak up. But for the moment, I'll just pass it over to my colleague, Tony Parsons, to open it up for question and answer.
Thanks, Jenny. First, thank you to all my panelists who did speak already. I think the insights you provided are fantastic. You know, it's taking from your personal experiences, you know, being a legislator, being a youth and care, being someone from California, being from Kentucky, and being from the state of Michigan. I think you all bring a unique perspective to this work. And so I'm really excited to open up to some Q&A, and I can see that I already have a question from friend of mine, Ariel Duncan. So Ariel, you want to take yourself off mute, and you can ask your question. And it's great to see you. It's been a while.
Honestly, it has. It's crazy how time just flies by, honestly, during the summer. But I honestly just want to thank and appreciate everybody for their efforts and the other leaders are taking to ensure that, you know, youth and including me have this and are getting the funds that are needed during this time, honestly. And my question honestly would be for any, I think, supportive adult in this time that's on the call. And my question is like, what can, you know, people with experience, what can they do necessarily at this time that's not already been done to make changes like inside the system, or even just like currently what's going on with this specific funding? And is there anything that we can do, you know, as alumni or just with experience ourselves, just in our smaller communities or even just nationally? And yeah.
I'll pipe up on that one. It's a really good question. And I think it's something that I didn't even realize when I was a young person, is the impact you can have reaching out to your state representative, to your state senator. As soon as you get a message off to your representative or senator and they see you're one of their constituents, a little light bulb goes off and they want to hear from you. And I think the more that you do that and more that you realize they're just people, we're just people, you know, like I said, I'm a grandma, right? And reach out and say, hey, I'm a former foster child and I would like to let you know my experience, the priorities I have, and ways that the legislator can be helpful to you. Just start those conversations. You'll never know where that's going to go.
Thank you so much.
My name is Janae Shepherd. I am from Michigan. I've been in the foster care youth for about 7 years now. My experience with the foster care youth was pretty decent, being in the eligibility stages of the foster care. I am now 22 years old, and I was cut off way before 22 years old. So I guess my question to you guys is, will there be a back pay for the foster care youth that has been cut off way before the time limit of the eligibility for the foster care youth? Will there be a back pay when this money is released?
So I guess I'll answer that question. To be completely honest with you, we're not 100% sure what that is going to look like once the bill passes, if we are going to be able to. So you're speaking to, you will be speaking to about young people who were in the young adult voluntary foster care program. So they could have stayed in our program into the age of 22, and the young people who could have opted back into the foster care system who had closed between the time frames that the Division X bill kind of outlines. And I won't remember exactly what those time frames are. We are not 100% sure what that's going to look like once the bill passes. We are definitely going to, on our end, make any and all efforts that we can to ensure that funds get to young people, but whether or not we're going to be able to back pay young people who would have been eligible to come back into care, we're not sure at this time. But definitely more information will come. And I know that it wasn't just about the funding, though. I also just want to make sure we're clear that while the funding is one piece of it, it was also about just the case management and support that young people would have also gotten during this time. So we all know money doesn't resolve everything. It doesn't resolve all of our issues. So it's unfortunate that young people not only missed out on this funding, but they also missed out on the support and case management that they could have gotten during this time. So it'll be more information to come.
And Brandy, one thing just to note is Illinois is one state that when they did implement, they did do some retroactive benefits for extension and reentry. So could definitely connect you with them because I know they were looking at how to make that work and also work with your funding. So that might be a place to look to just, again, don't reinvent the wheel if we've got some states that have addressed this issue. And I
Yes,
don't know,
that would
Lorraine.
be amazing if you can make that connection.
Definitely we can.
Thank
And
you.
Lorraine, I don't know if that's something that you confronted either. I know you guys started pretty close to the time, so you didn't have much to go back with, but I imagine maybe the question to come up for you.
It did actually. That was a great point that Brandy made though around the case management, and the money is important, but really it's the support that is integral as well. But yes, we did have that issue. Even though we implemented the our pandemic relief efforts fairly early, there were still several weeks, or I think probably about 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, where before we were able to implement it, in order to allow young people to come back into care and to stay in care, our legislature, we had to wait for legislation to be passed. And so there was probably about 4 to 6 weeks where young people were leaving care who could have otherwise stayed, and young people who couldn't come back into care who otherwise could have under Division X. And so really, we just worked as quickly as we could to notify those young people who had left that they can come back. But I will tell you, hearing from those young people, they were frustrated, right? Tia actually being one. Tia could actually speak to that. She left care during that time. She was forced to leave care because she turned 21. Whereas had we already implemented Division X, she wouldn't have had to leave care. She could have stayed in care. She could have had that continuity of her housing, of that case management support, that financial support. But because we weren't able to implement it for 4 to 6 weeks, she had to leave care. She had to make her own housing arrangements. She had to take on expenses, etc. But as soon as we were able to get her back, I notified her that she's able to come back in care, but then she had to do the process to come back into care. And so, that delay really did cause our young people a lot of unnecessary, issues. And so that was unfortunate.
So we did get a question into the chat, and I see that we have some hands raised. So Jasmine and Clarence, we see you, and we'll definitely get to you. But I do want to address a question that did come in just before both of you in the chat. It says, how can community colleges better support foster youth foster youth or foster care alumni while they're trying to get higher education as well? I think that's a very critical piece of this as well.
I can answer this question slightly. So here in California, it's a little different than in Michigan. So all of our community colleges are connected under the California Community College umbrella. But individually, each campus, depending on where you're at, we do have guardian scholars, foster youth programs, and different, and at some of our colleges, and including other colleges that have next up programs. These two programs are designed to help foster youth that are in community colleges and wanting to get pursue an education, either for an associate's or a bachelor's degree. And so I would say in Michigan in particular, what you'd want to do is connect with your services or whatever is available at your community colleges, or talk with the counseling departments and some of the higher up administration. Don't be afraid to reach out to them. Or if you are in higher up administration, know that this is important to a lot of your youth that are on campus. And financial aid offices are another place to connect with. I know my financial aid office, there's a specific point person at our college and other colleges that work specifically on Chafee funding and administering those to students that receive that. So another good place to start would be looking at your financial aid persons and seeing whether or not they're aware of the pause in legislation or how that how they can influence that process.
Definitely. Thank you for that.
Also, before the question passed, I want to talk about that too. And also like in here at U of M, there's also like a resource for the foster youth. Like I myself, I was for in foster care too. Like Joshua say, like the financial aid, like talk to the like counselors. So there's like a lot of like programs here like empower my succeed. And scholars is like help like other like students. It don't matter if they are in foster care or like that, but also it's like important to reach out to other potential like programs in campus.
Definitely, yeah. And not to put anyone on the spot, but Carrie Ward from Washington State, Michigan. Sorry, Carrie, you knew this was going to happen. If you have anything that you might be able to add, Washington State, Michigan does a lot of work in the higher education foster youth space. That's how I met Carrie and Ariel, actually. So, Carrie, I wonder, not to put you on the spot, but if you have anything you would like to add.
Sorry, I'm not going to. This is Carrie Ward with Fostering Success Michigan. I'm sorry, I'm not going to turn my camera on. I'm not feeling well, but I didn't want to miss this this meeting. So yes, I would say that I see many coaches actually on this call and a lot of MDHHS employees, MYOI coordinators. I know that the community colleges and even some of the university campuses have variety of funds where they can support students with various kinds of emergencies and that sort of thing. I would also encourage anyone to also reach out my way because I can also connect you. But I definitely think that I feel your frustration because it's like the money is there and it's just not available. And that's very, very frustrating, I think, to everyone, including our campus support people, our students, and even our folks, our partners at MDHHS. So I know that time is short and I feel like there's really no good answers. I'm glad that we're talking about it and I'm glad that we're learning about what is happening in other states. But I think that the level of frustration that everyone has at this point with these legislators is just completely fair. And I'm glad to see some legislators on. I actually, Mary had, Representative Whitford had cut out when she was explaining kind of like what happened between, like what was the holdup or whatever. So I missed that part, but I would just encourage all of the youth on the call today, or all of the professionals, for sure to reach out to your senators and press them to do what they need to do here. And that's kind of all I have to add. I'm sorry, I don't have like any good answers.
That's all right, Carrie. I think what you said was very helpful. And sorry,
I do have a question, and I don't mean to cut you off, Tony. I've been trying to have this question for a minute. So I please, can I state the question?
Yeah, please.
Thank you. This is to Brandy, Lorraine, and Ms. Ward. I am a parent of a foster care who has departed us, who's no longer with us. But the situation was, and I want to touch on case management because that's a very sensitive but necessary subject to really touch on, because we're talking about funds that's allocated now for this pandemic. And I know the CARE Act funds cannot be reallocated. They have to go towards the funding that which is designed for, but the other funds can actually be reallocated. I want to touch very briefly on that and saying, no, Governor Rich Grenchen didn't say that she wanted to do funding for roads. So I just want to hope that she can hear this presentation as well, because what is needed is that my son was in the system, and as he was in the system, there was a delay in payment. It was such a delay in payment with his foster parent, it caused friction with the foster parent to where the foster parent thought my son was scamming him and conning him to where he jumped on my son. He stole the Cadillac converter off his car and tried to set the car on fire. My son, in that 6 months period, eventually did get the funding release, but he also ended up getting killed. And we don't really know the cause, if this may be the cause of his death. And all I can say is that these fundings are essential to the youth, especially those who have overcame hurdles and have derived with a plan of being self-sufficient. I just think that it is imperative that we make sure that the system is not failing, that's already in place. And what's in place, we can be quick to critique and make it more essential for being more effective and adequate with the making sure that the money is really going and to the appropriate places that it needs to go, with making sure there's no delay in payment to where they have these problems. Just like she said, it was so many people that can age out, but there's so many people that are still fall in the age group that needed help. And it's unfortunate because who do they have besides the state now? And so even with the Republicans, they want people to work. They want us to be successful. They don't want us to be, and they want us to be part of a community and be a pillar of that community. So let's give them a fighting chance is all I'm asking. But more importantly, make sure the system that's in place is being critiqued and revised to where it is becoming excellent and efficient to pay the people that's already supposed to be paid. And then when these extra funds come in, making sure that they do get it and making sure it's reallocated properly to the proper places and not reallocated to another entity or funding. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing. And I think I speak for everyone. I'm so sorry for your loss. That is unacceptable across the board. And I know this meeting is being recorded, so I'm hoping we can share it with those who could be here in the governor's office. So just thank you for sharing. And that's why we're here. We're going to do this good work together, make things as best as we can. Jasmine, it is your turn. Thank you for waiting patiently. If you still have a question, this would be a great time.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, there was a few things I just wanted to rewind and go back to. One was the main thing about they were saying about basically the funding being put out. Well, first, let me start. My name is Jasmine Ukta, and I am a former foster alumni. I was a foster care from 7 to 19, and I decided to advocate for foster youth afterwards in several different programs. So I want to be able to learn as much as I can how to help youth in my community. I had heard something of the pandemic, and they spoke of, the social workers. Basically, my question is, are the workers going to be properly trained for these resources? Because as a former foster alumni, my biggest issue with me aging out of foster care is that my caseworker or case manager did not have the proper information or resources. So this is great and everything, but if these young people aren't on a call or don't get word of mouth, like through the grapevine, technically speaking, how are the caseworkers being trained or educated on what's available to the youth on their cases and the youth that aren't on their cases anymore? Like, how do they reach the youth and make sure everyone who needs this, because there's a lot of people in a pandemic who don't have a phone, who don't have housing right now, who don't have a way to get on Zoom or to reach out to someone and be like, what's going on with this pandemic money? So my first question was basically, how do we get this out to the young people from a caseworker perspective, a peer mentor, a coach? Like, how is this being pushed so that those who suffer actually know it's something available? Because I can count at least 15 people I know right now that need housing, that need a cell phone, simply a cell phone, that they need food, but they need somewhere to cook the food. So my question was, how do we get that to them? And then it was a lot going on, but I just want to mainly focus on that first.
Thank you for the question. Brandy, I think that might be best answered by you.
Yes, Jasmine, you have multiple questions. So let me see if I can I'm going to do my best to answer your questions. First, I would like to say that while we strive to do the best, right? Here at the department, we recognize that there are deficits. And so you spoke of case managers and our team sometimes not being aware of the resources that are available to young people. We continue to do ongoing training, at least in our office, we offer training to educate our staff on the resources that are available to young people in Michigan. Keeping in mind that sometimes we have changes in staffing, right? Anyone who is a part of the system, this isn't just a Michigan issue, right? This is across the board that we often have changes, or I won't say often, but we have changes in staffing. And so we have to stay up to date on what's going on. And as resources are being added or taken away, it is our responsibility, and it is our staff responsibility to make sure that young people are aware of the resources. And we will continue to educate our staff as well as train our staff. In terms of the pandemic funding, once released, I spoke during my time about our communication insurances. So that is kind of our instructions to the field, to our foster care staff, about how to process funds, how to access the funding, and what the funding can be utilized for. In addition to that, we will do phone calls with our supervisors. So every month our supervisors get on a call. We will make sure that we are talking to the supervisors who are supervising our staff to make sure that they're aware of this. So we do have some plans in place to ensure that young people or particularly our staff is aware of these resources. In terms of young people, Jasmine, you brought some really good points. It is going to be hard for us to identify some of these young people. We're so thankful for Think of Us, who already started providing us the list of young people. So if you have not already, I would recommend you going to the Check for Us, Think for Us, Check for Us, and completing their survey, because we are getting that on a weekly basis, so that once we do get this funding, we can hit the ground running and trying to get young people these resources. But I will also say that we are leaning on our young people to also spread the word. You guys are going to be our best advertisement, and talking to your peers and doing your social media. We can't keep up with the changes of all the social media platforms. So we're really going to lean on our young people to really educate their peers on what is available to them, recognizing that once this passes for our young people that are between the ages of 23 and 26, we won't have a lot of time, because the provisions for that funding for that age group expires September the 30th. But I guarantee you and assure you that we are going to move fast. We are making that age group a priority. So we're not forgetting about the other young people that are under the age of 23, not forgetting about you guys, but we are going to really move to make 23 to 26 our priority and getting funding and resources allocated to those young people. Jasmine, I hope I answered all of your questions.
Thank you for that, Brandy.
Sorry, I was trying to go off mute, but yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question, Jasmine. Thank you for such a thorough response, Brandy. I know that you guys are going to move with like lightning fast as soon as you can. So I look forward to seeing that happen and doing everything we can to make sure it happens. And I think if he's still here, Clarence Hall had a question. I'm not seeing his hand up, but I know I want to get to him. And fun fact, Clarence is actually my brother. So Clarence, this does not count as our family check-in, but if you are still here, please ask your question.
Hey Tony, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you, sir?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for asking. So my question was actually answered by Jasmine, I believe her name was, just about like funding for people who don't necessarily have a phone or aren't in the best situation. How can they still be serviced with the funding? Because obviously, when community.
You're breaking up, buddy. well, it wouldn't be a Zoom call if there wasn't technical difficulty somewhere. But I think, but to his point, I think the question was answered, right? I mean, Brandy kind of said it, and I think it's, you know, we've seen this to be true, is young people are going to be the best way to reach the other young people.
Hello?
Yep.
Hello?
You're back. Yep. Okay. Yep. You're back.
Sorry
Cool.
about that. My Wi-Fi was acting up, or data on my phone. My second question is, outside of me, I heard a lot of people talk about, you know, foster youth that were in college, you know, foster youth that were working, even age ranging of college. But how do we get youth that aren't necessarily, you know, in the best mental space, for lack of better words, access to the funding? Because, you know, the knowledge that they have and the access that they have is really going to be dependent on how fast they learn about it. So how do we actually go about getting them access to the funds? Because, you know, it's not just about servicing one person, it's about servicing everybody. So that's really my question.
Great question. And you kind of cut out in there, but it sounds like you're trying to address, like, how are we going to reach people who kind of fall into the special population? Maybe they don't quite understand what's available. Is that kind of what you're going with? You kind of cut out.
Yeah, so that was one of the questions. And then my second question was, you know, how do we go about, you know, advertising this to, you know, the collective? Like, because obviously foster care doesn't just exist in one city. Exist all over the U.S. and, you know, even in some other countries. So how do we go about, you know, marketing or advertising that there is a COVID relief fund to, you know, foster youth in Michigan, to their home care providers, and to anybody that, you know, they're in contact. Word of mouth still do need somebody to advertise on social media, because, I mean, if you look at the statistics, I'm a business guy, 99% of America between the age range of 18 and 26 are on their phone about 90% of the day. So that would be the best way to network market or, you know, advertise that there is a COVID relief fund to service everybody.
Could I answer, or could I give some feedback? So I was going to give a suggestion to Michigan, just based upon our own experience here, something that I wish we had done differently, actually. So one of the things that I wanted to do very early on was to partner with a media campaign. Think of Us has been a great partner, but I wanted to focus or partner with the media company to do a campaign, as Clarence is talking about, because they can find you, right? As we all know, because we get those crazy, you know, advertisements on our phone that are like, they know what you've been looking at on your phone. They know everything about you. It's very creepy. So I wanted to partner with them to help us find our young people, because as Brandy said, you know, we aren't experts in social media. There's constant changes, TikTok, Instagram. We're not experts in that, but we wanted to partner. Unfortunately, as you all know, sometimes with contracts and things like that, we really weren't able to finalize and solidify something with the media agency until now, to the very end. And now our leadership is like, well, it's too late. I personally don't think it's too late, but I understand that they feel like it's too late. But if I would just suggest, you know, strongly encourage you to potentially think about partnering with a media agency. And one of the things I found out was that our community college, so had I known this ahead of time, that our community college actually have internal media companies, right? And since we already have contracts with them, we could have contracted with them. We could have worked with them. So I just encourage you to look at partners you already have and any type of resources they already have for media companies, media agencies, to piggyback on the resources they already have, because I think that will be integral, particularly 23 to 26, finding that age range that are already disconnected from us. They've been gone several years from, now. So, perhaps they can, they have ways to target it on social media. They can target, they have all these different mechanisms to target and find young people based upon their address, based upon their email. Email is another way. We were actually able to find a lot of young people by email. We had started collecting emails probably a year or two ago. That's just become our practice, to collect emails as young people leave care, to encourage them to open an email. And that actually has been helpful in finding and locating our young people. So I would just encourage you to think about a media company.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the answer. I do appreciate it. I didn't catch your name. I'm actually driving, so doing two things at once probably, didn't catch it. My last question is, when I turned 21, I was actually aged out of foster care in the U.S. in Detroit, Michigan. And, even after talking to my YVAC worker, and then even after talking to the worker that I had, the other worker that I had at the time, I even took it up to the supervisor level. I told them that I wanted to do MYOY to continue having access to stuff like this. And then also, if I was to go back to college, would I be able to receive funding for that? And I haven't gotten a response since my birthday. So how do we go about, like solving issues like that, like for youth that, necessarily don't have the support from their worker? Like, how do we go about getting them access to all the resources? Of course, advertisements like this, because I was actually blessed to be partnered with Parkwest Foundation. Shout out to Miss Sapa. She sent me the link to the Zoom call. And, without her, I wouldn't have known anything about this call. So, or other than, Tony Parsons, one of the leaders on the call as well. So what do we do for people that don't have a connection to people in the system that could really help them navigate through?
So I just dropped in the chat box, and I'm sure Saba can also email this out. It is MDHS Youth in Transition email. So if you are ever having issues, particularly our young people who places have closed, if you're having issues getting the information that you need from your workers or from closed case services, please feel free to email that email box. I check that email on a daily basis. And if I am not in the office, my coworker checks that email. And so if you're having any issues, Clarence, like you explained, where you're trying to get connected to some resources, please email that email box and we will get you to the correct folks. So in every county within the state of Michigan, we have a Michigan Youth Opportunities Initiative coordinator. So throughout the state, we have 43 coordinators that cover every county within the state of Michigan. Those tend to be our staff that assist young people with closed cases. They are phenomenal. If I could just say that, the staff that these staff that we have specialize in assisting older youth. And so they are sometimes my go-to to find out about resources. So in most of our counties, the MYOI coordinator is going to be that point of contact for our youth with closed cases. And in any cases that's not the point of contact, our office will be able to connect you to the correct individual that can assist you with gaining access to resources when you have a closed case.
I had one more question for you guys to piggyback off of what you just said. For the MYOI program, for a lot of foster care youth, we do have children. So I was wondering, as far as finances in the MYOY program and other programs that you guys have within the foster care youth, is there a way that we could provide daycare for the children so the foster care youth that does have children will be able to attend these programs with no issue? And as well as to piggyback off of the lady that spoke before Jasmine, I've had my own personal issues with landlords feeling like I'm skipping out on them because my workers have promised them to pay them, the finances that I need, that I'm behind on rent, or utilities that I need to help be assisted with. A lot of these workers aren't responding to case managers. And when you do reach out to their supervisors, as you guys said before, you get a lot of running around. They tell you, well, for me, I've been told, well, hey, you aged out. We can no longer help you, with certain things, and that's totally understandable. But I am a ward of the state, and I am a voluntary foster care youth. So I just felt kind of like entitled to some of the things that I was asking for. So yeah, I just wanted to know, I guess my two questions is there any possibility for the foster care with children to gain any type of access with daycare for these programs that we have available to us?
Janae, you bring up a very good point in terms of childcare. We recognize that in some cases, our young people are pregnant and parenting. And so while we want all young people to be able to be a part of these programs, we understand that sometimes childcare can be an issue, can be a concern. So I would say, depending on the county that you live in, to talk to the MYOI coordinator to see if there is something that we can assist with. If you have a family member or someone that you trust that can watch your child, maybe we can assist with paying them to watch your child while you come to the MYOI meeting. So I would say, please coordinate with whatever county you live in with that coordinator. And I can also work with them and we can try to problem solve any ways that we can, recognizing that everyone's situation is going to be unique and different. But we're not in the business of trying to exclude young people. We want you guys to be at the table and involved in programs that honestly are for you, right? The MYOI program is for you. So reach out to I put the email in there. You can also reach out to that. And like I said, I will work with the MYOI coordinators in that county to see if we can problem solve and figure out a way so that you can, or another young person in your position can participate in the program.
Awesome. Thank you.
To your
So much.
second point, I gave you guys the email address, and hear me, if I will repeat it again 1,000 times over. Please feel free to email that email address. If you are having an issue accessing services, we will get you guys connected to the appropriate people. If there is an issue that's occurring with your worker, we will intervene and work with that worker and that supervisor to ensure that your services, your needs are being met. Also recognizing that there is some truth when workers say there are certain things that we can assist with once your case closes or once you reach a certain age. But if any way possible, we will service you guys. We will connect you to resources in the community when we can.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much to everyone who asked the question and to all my past panelists, especially you, Brandy. I think you had the bulk of the questions, so thank you so much for sticking around. I know we're a little bit past time, so I do want to pass things over to Carlos to kind of close out. But Carlos, before you do that, could you also mention, you or Shay, mention the petition that you guys have started, so even more young people can get involved and do some more work, as we lead up to getting this done. And I see the change.org petition has been dropped into the chat, but if Shay or Carlos want to say a few words about it before we close out.
So we currently have a change.org petition regarding the issue that we just addressed. It currently has over 400 signatures. So if everyone could, sign in, we'll gladly appreciate it. But the details of everything is on the website, and I did drop the link in the chat box for everyone.
Excellent, Shay. And I cannot understate the importance of petition and how effective they can be. When we were trying to pass this at the federal level to get the funds out, we started with the change.org petition and it happened. So I cannot understate how critical those can be. So please sign up if you haven't already. And Carlos, please take us home.
Yes, thank you. Indeed, it was a really conversation to have everybody here. And thank you for listening. It's FYTech position that while the delay for the emergency needed critical pandemic funds and protection has caused a significant hardship on foster youth. Returning these funds to be a federal government and denying the vulnerable foster youth help those that make moral or fiscal sense. And we thank our panelists, Foster Club, Foster Village, Youth Law Center, and all the or Park West Foundation, FYTech Youth, whose value are loved, compassion, forgiveness, humility, service, family, self-accountability, humanity, and respect. We are remembering those values to honor our daily friend, Javar Harrell, who's no longer with us. So and please join our supporting all Michigan Foster Youth through the change.org. So, and thank you for coming again and continue to foster hope in Michigan and foster youth.
Great job. I just have one quick question. Is there a particular legislator that you're working with in regard to attempting to get the funds released? My name is Marcel Arbuckle. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Urban Youth and Family Development.
So, Shay, would you like to elaborate on the different efforts? Because it's not a specific person. We worked with many others. Shay, would you like to
I was just gonna say that. So yes, hi, my name is Avishay Grayless. I'm the president of FY Tech. So we have definitely done a couple of events, but the most recent where we had direct contact with different legislators and representatives was our lobby day that we had on May 26th, where we actually went to the Capitol lawn of Lansing, and we went inside of the Capitol building, and we had conversations with different legislators and representatives. So that was one of the most recent efforts in, trying to get funds advocated for and released.
Okay. Okay.
And we call and we email our Senate legislators, representatives. We stay in constant communication.
And also,
well, our organization has signed the petition. We've circulated it around through the faith-based community within Detroit. But one of the things that might be helpful and impactful is if there was a particular letter that had been created that individuals could send to their individual legislators addressing the issue and motivating their legislator to support the effort. It would be a really direct call from the citizens to the people within the House of Representatives and within the state legislature that represent them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Arbuckle. Go ahead. Do you want to still respond? Go ahead, Shay.
Oh, yes, I was going to mention the change.org petition, which is one of the reasons why we developed the change.org petition, so that everyone can have access, to the same document and sign off on it and agree to what it is. And we also have a letter that we have sent to the governor herself that was actually sent out.
Yeah.
Can we get a copy of that? Well, what I'm saying is, if our organization and different organizations that support foster youth, like the Faith Communities Coalition on Foster Care, the Center for Urban Youth and Family Development, the Children's Center, the Children's Foundation, if those organizations had copies of that letter and they could forward that to their legislators, it seems like it would give us a little bit more momentum.
Definitely. Let me respond also that we are extremely fortunate to have Representative Whiteford, who is the chair of the House Task Force on Adoption and Foster Care, appointed by Appropriations Chair, Representative Thomas Alberts, and it's an 11-member team. And we have full confidence, and we have the commitment today that she will help us navigate this, and she's already been doing the research. So that's going to be our point person, even though we are encouraging for everyone to reach their senators. And we also had a letter that was accompanying the youth letter, which is similar to the change.org document that is written by retired Justice Maura Corrigan, supporting this. So it's very similar to the change.org document, but definitely that could be your base. But thank you. And in the chat room, again, we had another commitment from Representative Whiteford, just reaffirming the commitment for foster youth in Michigan, and she's working hard to support us.
Okay, well, anything that our organization can do we're more than willing to do. And we just need some direction, that's all.
Thank you so much, and we will reach
Thank
out.
you.
Thank you.
We
Mr.
definitely
Arbuckle.
appreciate it.
We really appreciate you all, and have a safe drive for those of you that are driving, for those of you that are home. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you so much for joining us. And
Yes, thank you. We definitely appreciate you listening to your voice.
and for all of you guys, for the young people that have been doing this fight and this work. So thank you.
Yes.